So again, this is going to be a follow-up to the video I made yesterday. It's going to concern Chapter 2 or Factual Findings 2, which is Chapter 2 of the Office of Inspector General Report on Central Intelligence Agency's accountability regarding findings and conclusion of the 9/11 Joint Inquiry Report. And I want to concentrate on this chapter, which is Factual Findings Chapter 2, Signs of an Impending Attack. The chapter illuminates that the Joint Inquiry's findings in the summer of 2001, that there were many warnings, unprecedented warnings regarding Osama Bin Laden's wish to attack inside the United States. However, the Inspector General report basically says that the warnings were not unprecedented, nor were they specific. Boy, am I going to be specific in this video. But first and foremost, let's read together. It's not going to be as long as yesterday. What I'm going to do is basically share the screen here and going to read with you regarding this chapter. Okay, here it is. Factual Finding 2, Signs of an Impending Attack. Factual Finding 2 of the Joint Inquiry Report states that during the spring and summer of 2001, the Intelligence Committee experienced a significant increase in information indicating that Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda intended to strike against U.S. interests in the very near future. Now, the finding notes that some intelligence community personnel described as unprecedented the increase in threat reporting during the months leading up to September 11, 2001. Among the many examples cited of stepped-up reporting between September of 2001 timeframe, the National Security Agency, which is the agency that often goes ignored, meanwhile, they had the most information pre-9/11, issued 33 communications, 33, indicating the possibility of an imminent attack by Al-Qaeda. The finding also acknowledges that the Intelligence Committee advised senior policymakers, that's the White House, of the likelihood of an attack, including in threat advisories, National Security Council briefings, and current intelligence pieces, although the nature of the reporting did not lend itself to any specificity. Now, we don't know about the specifics of September 11, 2001. That's the one thing that's missing, whether that actually exists, that intelligence or not. I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that the NSA, who were listening to Bin Laden's satellite phone, who were listening to the phone calls in the house in Yemen, that they were talking about attacks, and there was some specifics, but this information is classified. This is the reason why I want to open up a Freedom of Information request regarding the cables or the information, the communiques of Bin Laden's satellite phone and the house in Yemen by the NSA and CIA. What do you think they were talking? Now, assessment of the finding. The Office of Inspector General's 9/11 review team agrees that in the months prior to 9/11, the Intelligence Committee received numerous indications of an impending Al-Qaeda attack. The team also agrees that during part of the spring and summer, the number of these indicators increased. Now, even the Inspector General report is saying that there were indeed a high number of warnings from the intelligence community. However, the team cannot fully concur with the finding as stated, in that research shows that this increase did not continue throughout the entire 6-month period leading up to 9/11. Nor did the team find that this increase was unprecedented across all broad intelligence collection systems, as the findings narrative suggests. That's, of course, in contrast to what the Joint Inquiry found. Now, I'm going to believe the Joint Inquiry because the Inspector General report, this is from the CIA, is basically going to cover up the lack of sharing intelligence with other agencies that could have stopped 9/11 from happening. Now, you may say, well, the Inspector General report, And how can you disagree, right? Let me just show you the video of Carl Levin reading the Joint Inquiry's findings about intelligence threat matrix reports as far back as 1999. That would contradict the Inspector General's report of the warnings between March and September of 2001, suggesting that there were no specifics, suggesting that there was no unprecedented warnings. Yes, there were. Let's hear what Carl Levin has to say.
The intelligence community on heightened alert. And I've prepared a chronology, which I'll share with all of the members, which, just to summarize, go back a few years before her beginning of the story. January of '96, when the CIA created a special unit to focus on Bin Laden. In February of '98, when Bin Laden issued a public fatwa authorizing and promoting attacks on U.S. civilians anywhere in the world. May 1998, in a press conference, when Bin Laden says he's going to bring war to America. In June 1998, when the intelligence community obtains information from several sources that Bin Laden is considering attacks in the U.S., including Washington and New York. August 1998, when the intelligence community obtains information that an unidentified group from the Middle East are going to fly an explosive-laden plane from a foreign country into the World Trade Center. September 1998, when the intelligence community obtains information that Bin Laden's next operation could possibly involve flying an aircraft loaded with explosives into a U.S. airport.
Pretty specific.
October 1998, when the intelligence community obtains information that Al-Qaeda was trying to establish an operative cell within the United States. The fall of 1998, when the intelligence community obtains information concerning a Bin Laden plot involving aircraft in New York, Washington.
Pretty specific.
And then in December 1998, when as we heard yesterday or the day before, when DCI Tenet provided some written guidance to presumably everybody in the CIA, declaring that the United States is at war with Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. That's December 1998.
Unprecedented.
The story begins. The spring of 1999, when the intelligence community obtains information about a planned Al-Qaeda attack on the United States government facility in Washington. August 1999,
Specific.
when the intelligence community obtains information that Bin Laden has decided to target for assassination the Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense and the DCI. December 1999, when Ahmed Rassam is arrested as he attempts to enter the United States and the state of Washington from Canada with chemicals and detonator material as intended target at Los Angeles Airport. December 1999, when the DCI communication to CIA employees warns of mounting threat of Al-Qaeda attack to U.S. interests abroad and in the United States, urging them to do whatever is necessary to disrupt Bin Laden's plans.
There's the specifics of the case. As you can see, that totally contradicts what the Inspector General states regarding the Joint Inquiry's findings. But let's continue. The team does agree that during the summer of 2001, many observers perceived the indicators of a possible attack to be unprecedented. One, in late June 2001, the Counterterrorist Center sent out a cable to all stations noting the Director of Central Intelligence request to share with liaison tear line information stating, quote, over the last several months, we have seen unprecedented indications that Bin Laden and his supporters have been preparing for a terrorist operation, end quote. But as you could see from the Joint Inquiry's findings, that goes back to 1996. I said 99 before, correct, 96. In addition to an increase in sensitive reporting, the terror line noticed a surge in the release of public information and statements on part of Bin Laden. Now that goes back to even the early 1990s. I'm uploading currently on my WordPress all the press briefings that Bin Laden had given in the early 1990s. In early July, the unprecedented increase in terrorist threat reporting indicating that Al-Qaeda was poised to attack U.S. and Israeli interests. But we always know that Israeli interests are never attacked. It's always the United States. The Defense Intelligence Agency based its 30-day extension of a July 20, 2001 Defense Terrorism Warning Report on, quote, the fact that since June 21st, there have been an unprecedented number of indicators of near-term al-Qaeda attacks, end quote. Signal and human intelligence warnings. Signal intelligence warnings of a possible terrorist attack did increase. As you can see, it's redacted. That's the NSA, ladies and gentlemen, the NSA. In regards to human intelligence reporting, al-Qaeda threat reporting did increase between April and June of 2001, but then declined throughout the rest of the summer. I wonder why. 1. Directorate Operations telegraphed disseminations that warned of an impending al-Qaeda attack grew from 5 in April to 20 of April in June. April 5th to June 20th, before dropping again to 14 in August. Contrary to overall perceptions at the time, however, the April-June jump was not without precedent. Indeed, the increase to threat reports issued between August and October of 99 was steeper and the number greater. In addition, the spring 2001 increase stated from a low base, as the number of threats received in April 2001 was the lowest since the cold bombing of October 2000. And because there was lower warnings and lower reports, that means what? Security is relaxed. And when security is relaxed, bad things happen. And in this case, security should have never been relaxed until the threat was eliminated. Many times, they could have eliminated bin Laden in the 90s, whether it was the CIA, whether it was the Defense Intelligence Agency, or the fucking State Department under Clinton, which nobody ever really talks about. But no, all these assassination attempts were rejected. And that would go on to later in the Bush administration, when they had bin Laden surrounded in Pakistan in November, December of 2001, under a CIA-led operation with U.S. Special Forces called Jawbreaker. 2. An examination of all telegraphic disseminations on al-Qaeda, not just the threat-related ones, show a similar increase between April and June 2001, followed by a drop later in the summer. That's key. That's when immigration, airline industry relaxes in security. Again, whether that's intentional or not, we won't know. Again, this growth was from a low starting point, as the number of such TDs disseminated in April was the lowest since July 1998, immediately prior to the African embassy bombings. And why did that happen, the embassy bombings? Maybe because they didn't have proper security. Now, if you haven't seen my videos regarding the East Africa bombings, please do so. And you'll notice that there were threat reports leading up to the attacks that were generally ignored, including one guy who was involved with the bombing plotters, who went into a fucking embassy and said, hey, by the way, there's going to be a plot to bomb your U.S. embassies. What did the CIA do? Well, they deported the motherfucker. That's what they did. Thanks. You know, the one agency you think, well, you know, that serves in the best interest of Americans. No, they don't do a very good job. 3, finally, all cables that CIA issued on al-Qaeda increased by 63% to 958 during the period of April and July of 2001. This increase was also not unprecedented, as al-Qaeda related cables had nearly doubled to more than 1,500 per month between September and December of 99. That's because during that time in 99, we were engaging in a war, as outlined by Carl Levin, from the CIA, informing the policymakers. Let's blow that up and read that. The team's review confirms that the CIA kept senior policymakers informed of the threat, but they weren't specific. For example, during 2001, the CIA would hold principal meetings with the leading members of the Intelligence Committee and the Pentagon in these monthly meetings regarding the current threat matrix of the United States. Now, the CIA intentionally withheld information that 2 al-Qaeda operatives were already inside the United States. They didn't tell senior policymakers about that, nor did they tell them that they had U.S. visas. Only until August, late August, that's August 21st, 2001, did they say, oh, we really got to tell you something. There are Al-Qaeda operatives inside the United States. We don't know where they are. And they still didn't tell them their names, nor did they tell them they had a fucking visa inside the United States. I wonder why they withheld that information. Let's continue, please. Okay, now let me. Threat posed by Sunni extremists. While this number was greater than the single advisory of the IICT issued in 2000, it was below the 6 issued in 1999 during the run-up to the millennium. CIA also warned of the threat in regular Intelligence Committee teleconferences run by the National Security Council in a July 2001 Deputies Committee meeting, in several briefings for House and Senate committees, and in dedicated briefings for the president in March and July. In addition, during this time frame, the DCI and a number of other CIA officers called various foreign leaders and heads of liaison services to alert them of the increased threat. Now, at the same time, these foreign intelligence communities were also sending their threat cable warnings to the United States, and they were just as vague. I mean, everybody knew in their mother that Bin Laden was attacking inside the United States. Meanwhile, the Secretary of State, the National Security Advisor to Bush, Condoleezza Rice, once said in a 9/11 Commission briefing that there was no threat matrix handed to them, and that the threat matrices later that were received by the Bush administration during these National Security Council briefings were quite vague. Well, that's because not everything was basically truthful, right? A lot of information was not shared even with the principals at the meeting. Now, you got to ask yourself why. Why wasn't there a full disclosure of all the information from an agency like the CIA? And the NSA basically, didn't share a lot of its information with anybody. They hoarded information. Why? Why did they do this? These are the important questions, all right? Not if there was fucking thermite at the World Trade Center. Here we have freaking specifics right here at your fingertips. And I didn't get this report from a freaking guy in a tan jacket in the middle of a garage when he's smoking a cigar. I didn't have to pay for it. This is public information. In addition, several threat warnings regarding Al-Qaeda appeared blank between March 1st and August 31st of 2001. These pieces warned of the possibility of an impending attack, and several clearly emphasized the seriousness of the threat. These pieces included, one, an article blank that emphasized that the threats from Bin Laden, including those his organization made in public statements, were real, not part of an Al-Qaeda disinformation campaign. Two, a piece that ran blank, which noted that operatives linked to Al-Qaeda expected that the near-term attacks they were planning would have dramatic consequences, such as destabilizing governments or causing major casualties. Three, an article blank that warned that while Al-Qaeda had postponed one terrorist operation for a few months, others remained in train. However, the volume of this reporting blank was relatively small when compared with other, it's redacted. Although the CIA used many vehicles to inform the policymakers of the threat, you're kidding me. You're kidding me. These reports were not fully disseminated with the policymakers. This is the whole point of my rant, is that the CIA was not forthcoming with their information. Neither was the NSA, let alone with the fucking Saudis and Israelis collected in the years they were prior to the 9/11 attacks inside the country, following the Al-Qaeda operatives and their affiliates throughout the Southwest and Northeast, using art student rings and moving companies. CTC analysts did not write any intelligence reports or similar product during the late spring or summer that provided any assessment of the overall threat. I wonder why. IRs early in the year warned of threats in Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Yemen, between mid-May 2001 and 9/11. However, CTC wrote no intelligence reports that provided a comprehensive analysis of all the threats being received or that put the then current warning environment in context. Oh, in other words, we have some warnings for you, but they're just not specific. Now, again, did they have specifics regarding dates and names and where they are? That stuff may be classified. That stuff may not exist, but there's enough threat level warnings here to keep security at the highest fucking levels in the most important apparatuses of our national security. Accountability. You're kidding, right? The team makes no recommendation concerning accountability in regards to this finding. Well, that's a shocker. However, the team notes that the failure to provide a broad assessment that pulled together all the threat information received during spring and summer 2001 is part of the broader problem of inadequate comprehensive strategic analysis, which the team assesses in the discussion of systematic finding 5. And of course not, right? Because we are basically not going to get specifics, because if there's specifics, they're classified. Yeah, we'll get the vague general warnings because they're fucking vague. That's the reason why they released those reports to the National Security Council briefings or to the policymakers in Washington, much less sharing it with the their adversaries of the intelligence community. There should be no fucking adversaries. They work for us. They're supposed to look out for our best interests. But as you could see throughout the chapters of this report, they clearly don't have that.